a number of insurers are citing these kinds of provisions and filing for rate increases around the country, blaming it on the provisions in the new law. On September 7th, you wrote to the Insurance Industry Trade Association and you said, quote, "The administration in partnership with states will not tolerate unjustified rate hikes in the name of consumer protection." Those are very strong words, but what can you do, if anything, about these rate hikes?
Well, I think what's important, and I have, spoken to the head of the American Association of Health Plans, spoken to the head of the Blue Cross Association, and if you look at the trends, companies were implementing double-digit rate hikes year after year after year. And what I think is very important is for companies to have accurate trend lines. What are the actuarial projections for these provisions versus what they were going to essentially do anyway? I was in the state legislature in Kansas for 8 years, and year after year after year, when legislators would consider some sort of a mandated benefit, companies would testify to dramatic rate increases as a result. We're going to have to raise our rates 15, 30, 40%. We're going to leave the marketplace. This will never work. Year after year after year, that turned out to be absolutely factually incorrect. It was never justifiable, and frankly, in most cases, they didn't do it at all.
So have you done your own analysis in the administration of is there any rate increase that is justified by these new rules?
We have two separate actuarial studies, Mercer and some other actuarial firms who have looked at these, who say they are estimating a 1 to 2% premium impact gradually as they come into effect, because again, some of the provisions are for existing plans. Some are only new plans as they come into the market. So these are, even though September 23rd is a date certain, these roll into effect, and particularly in the individual and small group market. What we know is that state insurance commissioners' jurisdiction varies dramatically. Some have full rate reviews, so they actually get the rates filed in advance. They have their own actuarial teams. They look at the trends. They look at the underlying costs. They make judgments about what's going on. And in most of those cases, whatever rate was requested is typically lowered once it gets into the marketplace. In other states, they have the so-called file and use, where a company essentially announces a rate increase and files it simultaneously with the customers. And some of those commissioners, after the fact, we saw that in California, rate increases up to 40%. The California commissioner is a file and use state, so he decided after that rate outcry began to conduct a third-party review. Not only did the company withdraw the rates and resubmit a significantly lower rate, but they found out that the rates that were submitted in the first place were based on the wrong trend line, a greatly inflated trend for medical costs. So rigorous rate review works. We have provided resources to state commissioners across the country to begin to beef up their operations. I'm going to meet with them again this week, because it's a real catch-22, Ron. The law assumes that states will regulate rates, that's the best marketplace. This is really a state-based bill. States are assumed to take the lead role in setting up the exchange, setting up the high-risk pool, doing the rate review. Only if they abdicate that responsibility or say they don't want to participate do we have kind of the backup responsibility.
So based on your analysis of what, your actuarial analysis, what do you expect will be the outcome of these requests for rate increases?
Well, I think the rate increases are likely to continue to be somewhat substantial, because the cost trends and their practice is fairly substantial, and it has little to do with the passage of the act. It has to do with their marketplace. And frankly, there is some justification saying that one of the issues that has hit companies in the economy, again, particularly in the individual market where people are out purchasing on their own, is that healthy folks drop their coverage when the economic squeeze occurs. If you're sicker or have a sick family member, you don't have that luxury, so you're keeping it. So their own risk experience is becoming more expensive. What we have to do is get healthier people back into the marketplace.
Well,